What's up, cats? Today I'll be talking about the most broken instrument in the band, the piano. This instrument can do pretty much anything you want it to. Giant chord? No problem. Pairing it with other instruments? With its 7-octave range, it can double every note played by other instruments in the band and then some. Cool ostinato with a lot of clusters? Piano's your instrument. Want it to double moving lines? No problem. It doesn't have to breathe, nor does it have issues with endurance. With the electric piano, you also get access to even more cool sounds. It's almost a perfect instrument, except for one thing. If the entire band is playing, they're not really going to be able to hear it. Maybe that's why it's called the... In a big band context, piano is a lot more suited to comping, or playing ostinatos, than playing moving lines. This is mainly because the piano is significantly easier to hear when playing more notes at once, having a harder time being heard if it does anything else. This is not to say that it can't be used for purposes other than comping at all, but it takes a lot more consideration than most other instruments. One solution to this problem is to double their lines in octaves. You hear this sound a lot in Afro-Cuban music, where the montuno is one of the driving forces of the song, so it's doubled in octaves to stand out better. This approach is great for doubling melody lines, or figures that are not overly technical. Especially when sight reading, having the second hand available to continue lines makes them a lot easier, but if you double it in octaves, you're taking away that safety net. So unless the pianist has a lot of time to practice the line, I would probably try not to give them anything overly technical. Also important is determining which piano to use. Piano is much more generally applicable, but there are a few genres where electric piano will really add to the overall sound. The electric piano is a quintessential part of these genres, and while these will sound fine played on a normal piano, it can give them a different character that might not exactly be what you're going for, but won't change the vibe a ton. It doesn't really work the other way around though, as there's a lot of genres where using electric piano instead of piano would just sound really out of place. It raises the question, why is electric piano here? What does it add to the chart? It may just be a pet peeve of mine, but I'm not a huge fan of when composers add things with no real explanation for why they did it. The piano also has pedals, but not nearly as many as another rhythm section instrument that will remain unnamed. These pedals don't change the sound nearly as much, and are also built into the instrument. They're mainly used at the discretion of the pianist, to help them play parts that might be inaccessible otherwise. It's not like guitar where you'll be telling the pianist what pedals to use. The exception is the sustain pedal, which sees a lot of use in chords where you want the piano to be less percussive, or when playing single-note ostinatos where the ostinato forms the chord. The piano has the largest range out of any instrument in the band by far, being the only instrument in the band whose graphic needs bass clef, treble clef, 8VB, and 8VA, and 15VA. The highest and lowest registers are used the least, with usage increasing the closer you get to the middle. The lowest register of the piano is best used to double notes an octave higher. On their own, these notes sound extremely muddy, and a lot of the time won't even sound like the note you're intending to play, instead just sounding like an unintelligible attack into low range. But if you add a note an octave above, it makes the intended note a lot clearer, and also adds a lot of color and intensity to said note. I like to call this range the Tagwan Hamasyan zone, as this octave doubling is extremely common across all of his music. This range is in a sort of weird limbo where it's good for ostinato bass lines, but still just a bit too low to do anything else besides play the lowest note of a line. This register is most commonly used for ostinatos, and for playing fifths in the left hand, a la McCoy Tyner. While low fifths sound great in this register, it's still just a bit too low in this one, so using low fifths with any of these notes as the bass note will result in a lower interval limit violation. Despite being lower, low fifths won't actually be as loud in this register due to the muddiness from the low interval limit, and will sound much louder if they're played in this register. Once the lower interval limit is no longer a concern, the lower the fifth is played, the better. This is where you'll want to write most of your piano parts. It's where pianists will do the majority of their comping, so it should be where you write the majority of your piano parts. It's also the best range for writing melody lines. This is because it's the most even register across the piano, still having the full sound of the lower register, but without the overpowering strength. These notes should mainly be heard at the top of voicings, or when doubling really quiet instruments. Otherwise, this register starts to sound really thin, really quickly, so most lines are best written an octave down. The exception is when other instruments doubling in this octave would be obscured by it being in a lower register. This is probably the range you'll be using the least. It can be used to double some instruments in extremely high registers, or to add color to something played an octave lower, but it can be tiring to listen to for long amounts of time, and also probably won't be heard except in very exposed moments of the chart. One advantage of the piano is that it is easy to play at a basic level. This is an extremely important skill for all composers and arrangers to have. It's not as necessary if your main instrument is guitar, but being able to both hear and see what you're writing is extremely important. At my undergrad, before taking jazz arranging, students had to take a course in jazz piano. Our teacher said that the point of this class was not to learn how to play jazz piano, but instead to learn how to play arranger's piano. To this day, I am still not a good pianist. Want me to play one chord? I got you. 2 chords? Not happening. Playing the instrument at a basic level is all the skill you need for it to help you as a jazz arranger or composer. Yes, MIDI playback also allows you to hear what you wrote, but MIDI lies. A lot of the time, voicings will sound significantly better on the piano than they do in MIDI. But if you stick to voicings that only sound good in MIDI, you're severely limiting your options. It's also significantly easier to check if something is playable on piano than on guitar. My logic has always been that if I can hack through the part as a non-pianist, a real pianist should have no problem playing what I wrote. If you can't play a voicing you wrote, it's very likely that the pianist won't be able to play it either. It's not as applicable to single note lines, but these honestly shouldn't be a big deal either, especially if they have both hands to play the line. Really, the only thing holding back the piano from complete meta-dominance is it being too piano. It takes much more consideration for it to be used effectively than guitar does. For example, if you double guitar with saxophone section, you'll still be able to hear the guitar no problem. But if you double piano with saxophone section, it's going to get lost very easily. While piano has the range to double every instrument in the band, a lot of the time this is going to be ineffective, as you simply will not hear the piano at all. Actually, why don't you just mic the piano so that it can balance correctly with the band? And what happens if you run into technical difficulties, or if where you're playing doesn't have enough room for that many amps? Gary Lindsay, who quite literally wrote the book on arranging, would always say that technology should not be used to make up for bad orchestration. In a studio setting, you can record piano in isolation, and then mix it so that it is heard with the entire sax section. But it's just going to sound unnatural, as this is completely impossible without the help of technology. This doesn't apply as much to comping or ostinatos, where the piano is heard much easier due to playing more notes, or by playing a repeated figure constantly while the other instruments are taking breaks. But for single notes, you have to be really careful. Piano can also step in a lot of holes on ballads. On these charts, the voicings tend to be extremely specific, so really your only options are to give piano the exact same voicings the band is playing, which is pointless because you won't hear the piano if all it does is play the exact same notes as the band the exact same time the band is playing. Or, if the ballad is a solo feature, switch between having the band accompany the soloist and the piano player accompanying the soloist. This technique works super well on ballads, as the main focus, along with the soloist, is usually the shifting timbres and orchestration. So switching from one group of instruments accompanying the soloist to just the rhythm section is a really cool color change. Using piano as a horn player in this context also works great, as for the majority of the chart, the goal is not to play loud. So you're able to hear it a lot better in the more muted textures usually found in a ballad. Due to the dynamic difficulties of the piano, it unfortunately doesn't work super well paired with a lot of instruments, as they will usually completely drown it out. But of course, like literally every other instrument in the band, it works super well with muted trumpet. Piano might actually be one of the best instruments to pair with muted trumpet, as while most instruments can only cover one of the notes needed to get the most use out of the section, piano has no problem playing every single note of the chord, making it very easy to hear both the pitch and the color of the mute. They also don't have to worry about range at all, being able to double muted trumpet in any octave they're playing in. This also makes piano an ideal instrument to double flute, as not only will it blend well with the low register of the flute, but it's also the only instrument in the band that can double the high register of the flute, as no other instrument will be able to play in that register quietly. Sure, you could double it with lead trumpet, but you're not going to be able to hear flute at all. Piano and clarinet is also a very common pairing for the same reasons, and it also sees a lot of use in choral music, where piano and clarinet will usually play the melody in unison. Piano is great for this as it's just as easy to play fast, covers the entire range of the clarinet, and is another genre where the main focus isn't playing loud, making it much easier for the piano to stand out. Overall, the only thing keeping this instrument from reaching its max potential is its volume, but there are many ways to write around this. octave doubling, ostinatos where you don't have to hear the piano the entire time, just letting them fill in the gaps of the chart by comping. There's a lot of ways to solve the piano, being to